I never imagined that inheriting my uncle's small farm would turn my life upside down. When I first arrived, I pictured quiet mornings, sipping coffee on the porch, listening to the soft lowing of cows, the gentle clucking of chickens, and the occasional crowing of the rooster. The sun would rise over green pastures, and life would be peaceful, calm, and orderly. Reality hit me the moment I stepped out of my truck. The dirt road leading to the farm was overgrown, and weeds sprouted through cracks in the old wooden fence. The barn leaned slightly to one side, and the paint was peeling in long strips, revealing the faded red underneath. The chicken coop looked charming at first glance, but I noticed holes in the wire fencing, a few broken boards, and the unmistakable smell of months of neglect. Before I could even take a deep breath, a blur of brown fur charged toward me. Coco, the playful calf, had spotted me immediately and decided that I was the best toy ever. He crashed into a bucket of water, splashing it everywhere, his wide eyes sparkling with mischief. And above the chaos, Sir Cluxalot, the enormous rooster, perched like a king on top of the chicken coop, crowing loudly as if announcing my arrival to the world. I took a moment to steady myself, brushing mud off my boots, and tried to imagine this place as the peaceful farm I had dreamed of. I set up a small grill to make breakfast, thinking at least my first meal could be serene. I flipped chicken wings on the griddle, inhaling the scent of sizzling meat mixed with the earthy aroma of the farm. The chickens clucked lazily in the background, and Bessie, the old cow, chewed her hay with a slow, deliberate rhythm. For a few moments, it felt almost idyllic. Then a loud crash erupted from the barn, making my heart jump. I dropped the tongs, the wings sizzling dangerously close to the edge of the grill. Adrenaline surged as I ran toward the noise. The barn doors swung open, and there it was. Coco had knocked over a stack of feed buckets, spilling grain across the floor. He looked up at me, ears twitching, as if asking, "What? This isn't chaos, it's fun." Before I could catch my breath, I noticed movement near the chicken coop. Old Mr. Harris, my overly curious neighbor, was sneaking around the corner, a mischievous grin on his face. He held something shiny in his hands. "Hey!" I shouted, but Coco, startled, bolted straight out of the barn, sending mud flying. The chickens erupted into chaos, feathers scattering across the yard. Mr. Harris froze, then darted toward the fence, clutching his prize, an egg he had clearly borrowed. I lunged for him with a net, shouting, "Give it back!" He muttered something about checking quality and ran off. By the time I corralled Coco back to the pen, the chickens had scattered into the neighbor's garden, scratching at the soil and pecking at any plant they could find. I muttered under my breath about how life on a farm was nothing like the calm, serene mornings I had imagined. After securing the coop and reinforcing the fencing, I thought I could finally breathe. But as I returned to the grill, I noticed Bessie's head stuck through the pasture gate, mooing piteously. Coco had already discovered another tiny gap in the fence, eyeing the neighbor's yard like it was an amusement park. Sir Cluxalot, ever dramatic, had climbed to the peak of the barn roof, crowing triumphantly as if announcing his dominance to the world. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of chaos. Coco chased a squirrel across the yard, sending buckets and hay bales tumbling. The chickens flapped and scratched, creating a feather storm, while Bessie refused to move until I approached with hay. Sir Cluxalot's crowing intensified, filling the air with a proud, unyielding presence. I darted from one disaster to another, slipping in the mud more times than I could count, laughing and groaning at the same time. By evening, I collapsed on the porch steps, exhausted. The sun cast long shadows across the yard, highlighting the mess. Overturned buckets, scattered hay, feathers everywhere. Yet despite it all, I felt a strange sense of accomplishment. Coco nuzzled against my leg, the chickens slowly settled, and Sir Cluxalot gave one last crow, a kind of evening applause. The farm was alive, unpredictable, messy, but it was mine. The next morning, I awoke sore and tired, but ready to face whatever the day would bring. The sun cast a golden glow over the dew-covered grass, but calm was nowhere in sight.
Coco had freed himself again, this time accompanied by a pair of squirrels darting through the yard. The chickens followed like a feathered army, and Bessie flicked her tail at the flying feathers, unimpressed. Sir Cluxalot perched atop a tree branch, crowing proudly. I groaned and ran toward Coco. "Come here, you little troublemaker!" But he dodged my grasp, leaping toward the squirrels and knocking over a small water trough. Mud and water splashed across the yard, soaking me from head to toe. I sighed. Squirrels now too? Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Mr. Harris returned with a wheelbarrow filled with old feed. "Maybe this will help," he shouted. But as soon as he tipped it, the feed spilled across the path. Coco ran in excitement, Bessie followed, and the chickens scattered again. I threw my hands up, shouting, "I surrender!" while mud splattered my face and clothes. By mid-morning, I had developed a new respect for the sheer energy of my animals. Coco was relentless, Bessie stubborn, and the chickens were pure chaos incarnate. Sir Cluxalot continued to oversee everything from above, narrating the day's events in his dramatic, crowing way. The sun shone high, casting long shadows over the muddy battlefield my farm had become. I knew drastic measures were needed. I grabbed a rope, a bucket of feed, and all the patience I could muster. I corralled Bessie away from the garden, coaxed Coco back into his pen, and tried to shoo the chickens toward the coop. But no matter what I did, the animals found new ways to create chaos. A stray chicken dove into the feed, Coco rolled in the mud, and Bessie found a new path through the garden. I laughed, slipped, stumbled, and muttered under my breath. As the day came to a close, I collapsed on the porch again, surveying the chaos. Despite everything, there was joy in the madness. The farm was alive, unpredictable, and full of energy. It wasn't the peaceful life I imagined, but it was real, it was messy, and it was mine.
The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, the golden sunrise spilling across the yard, highlighting every patch of mud, every scattered feather, and every little chaos maker waiting for me. Coco, of course, was the first to greet me, his wide, innocent eyes sparkling with mischief. He ran circles around my legs, making it impossible to take a single step without almost tripping over him. Bessie, unimpressed, simply chewed her hay, occasionally flicking her tail in my direction, as if silently judging my lack of organization. Sir Cluxalot, the rooster, had already claimed the tallest branch on the barn roof, his chest puffed out, crowing a triumphant morning greeting. I knew breakfast was not going to be peaceful. I lit the grill, preparing a few chicken wings for myself, hoping at least the aroma of sizzling meat could calm my nerves. But as soon as I set the wings on the griddle, Coco found a patch of soft mud near the barn and dove in, sending mud flying in all directions. The chickens, seeing their chance, rushed to the spilled mud, pecking and flapping, creating a whirlwind of feathers and chaos. I groaned, realizing that breakfast might need to be postponed indefinitely. I grabbed a bucket of feed, thinking I could lure the animals into some semblance of order. Coco sprinted after it, scattering the feed in every direction, while Bessie trotted over, sniffing the scattered grains, clearly unimpressed with the situation. The chickens, undeterred by any human attempt at control, decided the feed was their personal treasure and began a full-scale pecking frenzy. Sir Cluxalot observed everything, crowing more dramatically with each new turn of events, as if commenting on the spectacle below. Hours passed like a chaotic blur. I chased Coco out of the neighbor's garden for the third time, corralled Bessie away from a mud puddle she found particularly appealing, and gathered the chickens that somehow managed to get on top of the overturned wheelbarrow. Mr. Harris, peeking from behind his fence, laughed every time I shouted or slipped. "You've got your hands full," he said. I muttered something about farm life being deceptively simple, but I doubted he understood the kind of chaos that lived on this small property. Around midday, I attempted a short break, sitting on the porch, sipping lukewarm coffee, surveying the battlefield. Mud-streaked boots, feathers everywhere, hay scattered like confetti, and my grill, still sizzling, ignored wings. It all painted a vivid picture of life on the farm. Coco ambled over, nuzzling my hand, while Bessie lazily chewed her lunch. The chickens, finally satiated, huddled together in a corner, and Sir Cluxalot gave a final crow, announcing the brief ceasefire. I took a deep breath, realizing that life here was unpredictable but full of its own strange beauty. Just as I thought things might settle for a moment, a new challenge arrived. A storm was rolling in. Dark clouds gathered on horizon, wind picking up, leaves and feathers swirling around. Coco, sensing the change, began a frantic run through the yard, slipping in mud and sending buckets tumbling. The chickens, panicking, flapping wildly, while Bessie gave a long, mournful moo. Sir Cluxalot, ever dramatic, crowed in alarm, signaling the start of the storm. I grabbed what I could, a few chickens, a bucket for Coco, and my raincoat, bracing for what was about to become a chaotic ballet in mud and rain. The first drops fell. Mud became slippery, making it almost impossible to maintain balance. I chased Coco, who had now teamed up with a particularly brave chicken, forming a duo of chaos as they ran in circles. Bessie found a patch of grass near the barn, thinking she had discovered a safe haven, only to realize it was actually part of the neighbor's property. I shouted, slipped, and laughed, realizing that no matter how hard I tried, the farm had its own rules, its own timing, and its own brand of madness. Hours blurred into a wet, muddy afternoon. I managed to herd Bessie back to her pasture, though not without a fight, and coaxed Coco back into the pen, using the bucket of feed as bait. The chickens, exhausted from their frantic flapping, finally settled into the coop, feathers ruffling in the wind. So Cluxalot, wet but undeterred, perched atop the barn, crowing victoriously, as if declaring that the storm was merely another chapter in his story of dominance. I collapsed on the porch, soaked to the bone but exhilarated, realizing that survival on this farm required patience, agility, and a sense of humor. As the evening approached, the storm subsided, leaving behind a landscape transformed. Puddles reflected the amber glow of the setting sun. Mud glistened like glass, and the air was heavy with the earthy scent of wet soil and hay. Coco rested in his pen, finally calm, occasionally nudging my hand for attention. Bessie grazed quietly, chewing rhythmically, while the chickens nestled into the corners of their coop. Sir Cluxalot, ever the vigilant overseer, gave one last crow, a gentle farewell to the day. That night, as I cleaned up the mess, I reflected on what I had learned. Farm life was not for the faint of heart. It was chaotic, messy, unpredictable, and utterly exhausting. Yet in the chaos, there was joy. Every squeak, moo, cluck, and crow reminded me that life was alive in a way I'd never experienced in the city. It demanded attention, energy, and patience, but it gave back moments of pure, unscripted delight. Over the next few days, I began implementing small strategies to make life slightly more manageable. Coco got a small play area with hay bales and logs to tire him out. Bessie's pasture was reinforced to prevent further escape attempts. The chicken's coop received a sturdier roof and extra fencing. Yet no matter the precautions, chaos seemed magnetically attracted to my little farm. Every day brought new stories, new adventures, and new disasters. Each sunrise felt like opening the door to a live circus full of unpredictable performers who had no respect for human schedules. I began documenting these days. Notes, photos, short videos, and sketches of the chaos became a record of life on the farm. The stories themselves were often funny, sometimes dramatic, and always real. I shared them with friends who laughed at my descriptions of Coco's antics, Bessie's stubbornness, and Sir Cluxalot's theatrical crowing. I realized that these stories were not just about survival, they were about life, humor, and learning to embrace unpredictability. One afternoon, Coco discovered a hidden pond behind the barn. He bounded into it with wild excitement, sending mud and water everywhere. Bessie wandered over, inspecting the water with a careful, slow gaze, while the chickens cautiously pecked near the edge. I attempted to intervene, only to slip and land in the shallow pond myself. Covered in mud, soaked to the bone, I couldn't help but laugh. The animals didn't care about my discomfort. They were having the time of their lives, and somehow that made it all worthwhile. Sir Cluxalot, from his perch, crowed loudly, as if narrating the day's events. His dramatic performance made the whole scene feel like a theatrical play. Coco as the mischievous protagonist, Bessie as the indifferent sage, the chickens as chaotic extras, and me as the hapless, muddied narrator. Each day brought new acts, new improvisations, and new surprises. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting everything in warm oranges and purples, I finally felt a sense of peace. The farm had claimed me, yes, but it had also given me something invaluable. Stories, laughter, lessons, and a connection to life I could never have imagined. Despite mud, feathers, wet clothes, and chaos, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be.
The following morning, I awoke with the familiar groan of a body aching from yesterday's chaos. My muscles protested as I climbed out of bed, but the sun had already begun to paint the farm in golden hues. I knew that today would bring another round of unpredictable adventures, and yet I felt a strange excitement. After all, life on this farm, chaotic as it was, had become something I looked forward to every single day. Coco was the first to greet me, bounding over with ears flopping and hooves slipping in the morning dew. He nudged my legs insistently, demanding attention and perhaps a bit of breakfast. Bessie followed more slowly, chewing her hay with her usual deliberate patience. The chickens were already stirring, stretching their wings and pecking at anything that looked remotely edible. Sir Cluxalot, perched high on the barn roof, crowed proudly, as if announcing the day's grand opening ceremony. I headed to the barn to collect supplies for the morning, carefully navigating the mud puddles left from the previous day's storm. Coco, of course, saw the barn door as an obstacle in need of immediate inspection. He barreled past me, knocking over a bucket and sending hay flying. I sighed, knowing that even the simplest tasks were now infused with an element of chaos. My plan for the day was to repair part of the fence along the northern pasture. I gathered tools, nails, and extra boards, thinking that if I could reinforce the fence, Coco might stay put for a while. However, no sooner had I started hammering a board in place than I heard the unmistakable sound of a commotion near the coop. The chickens had discovered a gap I had missed, and feathers were flying as they dashed back and forth. Sir Cluxalot, apparently fully aware of my efforts, crowed loudly in apparent judgment. As I chased the chickens back into the coop, I noticed Mr. Harris peering over the fence again, his grin wider than ever. "Looks like another adventurous day," he called. I muttered something about luck and animals having minds of their own, but deep down I knew there was no luck involved, just the relentless energy of living creatures on a farm. After securing the chickens, I focused on reinforcing the fence. Coco watched my every move with a combination of curiosity and judgment, occasionally attempting to test the sturdiness of a board by bumping into it. Bessie, ever the wise observer, leaned against the fence, occasionally mooing in what seemed like encouragement, or perhaps criticism. The sun climbed higher, and sweat dripped down my back, but I felt a sense of accomplishment with each nail I hammered in, each plank I secured. By late morning, the yard had settled into a temporary calm. Coco rested in the shade of a tree, the chickens pecked quietly near the coop, and Bessie grazed lazily in her pasture. Sir Cluxalot, content for the moment, preened his feathers, occasionally crowing softly. I took a moment to sit on the porch, sipping coffee, watching the farm breathe in its chaotic, beautiful rhythm. Then disaster struck again. A loud crash echoed from the barn. Coco, having discovered a loose pile of hay bales, had decided they were obstacles to be conquered. He charged through them with exuberance, sending hay flying everywhere. The chickens panicked, clucking in alarm, and Bessie, unimpressed, trotted over to inspect the new mess. Sir Cluxalot crowed loudly, flapping his wings dramatically, signaling the escalation of events. I ran toward the barn, slipping in mud, shouting at Coco to stop, but he only ran faster, sending hay and dust into the air. I spent the next hour corralling Coco, calming the chickens, and restoring some semblance of order. My clothes were covered in mud, hay stuck in my hair, and my arms ached from lifting, pulling, and running. Yet, as I watched Coco finally settle in the shade and the chickens return to their coop, I laughed aloud. The farm was relentless, yes, but it was also full of laughter, energy, and moments that made every scrape, bruise, and splash worthwhile. Afternoon brought another challenge. A stray dog had wandered into the yard from a nearby property. Coco spotted the newcomer immediately and charged, barking and kicking up mud. The chickens panicked, Bessie mooed loudly, and I sprinted to intervene. The dog, however, seemed friendly, wagging its tail and clearly more confused than aggressive. After a chaotic chase around the yard, I managed to coax the dog into the barn, giving it some water and temporarily calming the situation. I muttered under my breath about how the farm seemed to attract endless surprises, no matter how carefully I planned. By evening, I had established a new routine. Coco had a dedicated play area to expend his energy, Bessie's pasture was secured, and the chickens were finally settling into a predictable pattern. I collapsed on the porch steps, mud-streaked, exhausted, and exhilarated. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm, golden light over the farm, highlighting every patch of chaos I had battled that day. Yet, despite the exhaustion, I felt a deep, profound connection to this place. Nightfall brought a sense of calm. Coco lay in his pen, occasionally nudging my hand for a final good night. Bessie grazed slowly, chewing her hay in rhythm with the evening breeze. The chickens nestled into the coop, clucking softly, and Sir Cluck-a-Lot, perched atop the barn, crowed one last time, a gentle acknowledgement of the day's events. I leaned back on the porch railing, sipping the last of my coffee, reflecting on how much my life had changed since inheriting this farm. Over the following weeks, I continued to learn, adapt, and embrace the chaos. Each day brought new stories: Coco's endless antics, Bessie's stubborn wisdom, the chickens' unpredictable mischief, and Sir Cluck-a-Lot's dramatic narrations. I documented every event, capturing videos, taking notes, and recording the humor, drama, and beauty of life on the farm. My friends laughed at the stories, often incredulous that such chaos could exist in a small rural property. Through it all, I realized something important. Life, much like the farm, cannot be controlled entirely. It is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes overwhelming. But in that mess lies beauty, joy, and moments that cannot be replicated. Every squeak, moo, cluck, and crow reminded me that life is alive, constantly moving, and full of surprises. And while I may not have envisioned a farm life filled with mud, feathers, and relentless energy, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. Months passed, and the farm became a living storybook. Every sunrise brought new adventures. Coco discovering hidden puddles, the chickens staging their own feathery rebellions, and Bessie asserting her quiet authority. Sir Cluck-a-Lot remained the ever-watchful narrator, his crowing a constant soundtrack to the unpredictable circus of my days. I learned to anticipate chaos, embrace it, and find joy in the simplest of moments. A nuzzle from Coco, a satisfied chew from Bessie, or the dramatic crow of my feathered overseer. I also found a rhythm amidst the chaos. Mornings began with feeding, followed by a careful survey of the yard, checking fences and pens and coaxing the animals into order. Afternoons were spent repairing, building, and adapting to new surprises. Evenings brought a rare peace, moments where the animals rested, the sun dipped low, and I could finally breathe, reflecting on the day's events with gratitude and amusement. The farm taught me patience, resilience, and the value of laughter. I learned that mistakes, spills, and accidents are part of life, just as they are part of farming.
I discovered that joy often comes in small, messy packages, and that love can grow in the chaos of daily routines. Each day was a lesson, a story, and an opportunity to embrace the unpredictable beauty of life. And so, as I sit on the porch, watching Coco play in his pen, Bessie grazing calmly, the chickens pecking near the coop, and Sir Clux-a-Lot crowing in his theatrical style, I realize that this farm is more than just land, animals, and buildings. It is a living narrative of chaos, humor, love, and resilience. Every mud puddle, feather, and overturned bucket tells a story of survival, laughter, and connection. The farm, in all its unpredictability, has become my home. And while I may continue to slip, fall, and chase mischievous animals, I now understand that these moments are not obstacles. They are the story itself. Life on the farm is a continuous, living story time, a saga of energy, love, and laughter that I am privileged to experience every day. And as the sun finally sets, casting long shadows over the yard, I know tomorrow will bring more adventures, more chaos, and more stories to tell. And I will be ready, mud-streaked, exhausted, and endlessly grateful for every single one.
Thanks for watching. Don't miss the next story.